The Gift and Curse of Modular Thinking. George Box famously said, "All models are wrong, but some are useful." The model of modular thinking is wrong. However, I believe it will prove to be quite useful. Thinking is hard. To come to proper conclusions about things is actually very difficult. We can do it, but it takes a long time to think of all the relevant variables and do the computations in our head. So, we've come up with a lot of heuristics to help with everyday cognition. One of those heuristics is what I call modular thinking. Modular thinking can be described in this example. We have Sally and John. Sally says something to John, and because John has had a long day at work, he just doesn't have the energy to think critically right now. What John does is he takes what Sally said, and instead of trying to understand exactly what she meant with her words, he uses modular thinking. In doing this, he listens to her sentence, he finds keywords, he finds a feeling about her sentence. He scans all the modules in his head. I call these thought modules. He finds one that fits what she says really well, and then he chooses to believe that this module is what she has said. So she says X, and he doesn't actually understand what she said. Instead, what he does is he finds a module in his head that he already fully understands and is prepared to deal with. And this module is similar to X. It might be very similar to X, it might be just somewhat similar to X. And that's what he effectively chooses to believe that she has said. And now it will be much easier for him to respond. It will not require as much work, and it will be much quicker. In addition to this, he already, since this module exists in his head, he already will be able to come up with seemingly proper and eloquent responses for this module, or at least responses that have words and are grammatically correct and generally sound right if you don't think too hard. This prevents him from having to hear a new idea and kind of from scratch start thinking about what he believes Sally has said and come to independent conclusions. Instead, he just finds this module that looks a lot like what Sally said. Boom. Now he already knows his line for this. He knows how he feels about this. Much easier, and he will actually look better in general to most onlookers, because this isn't something we notice. We generally don't notice that John uses modular thinking. We do notice, though, that his response was, fairly eloquent. He actually had the right words, and it's close enough to what Sally said that it seems right. So, in a nutshell, that's what modular thinking is. So modular thinking is useful because it makes us faster. It's more effective, and it's actually, I would say, argue useful in low importance tasks. So a task where it's not important to be 100% correct. So let's say you got to be 80% correct, but you have to be really fast. Use modular thinking in general. It is, of course, extremely error prone compared to true thinking, what I call true thinking. True thinking is where you don't use a module. You hear what Sally said, and you actually try and understand what she meant by putting those specific words together and then coming up with your opinion on what she said and how you feel about what she said. So there's times to use modular thinking, there's times not to use it. Anytime that reliability in a response is extremely important, or like getting very close to the absolute objective truth is extremely important, then you got to throw modular thinking at the door. You have to use true thought. Right now, I'm going to go through two different examples to try and really hammer home what modular thinking is, so that we understand what modular thinking looks like in everyday argument. So the first example is Ben Affleck and Sam Harris talking. They're talking about the ideas in Islam. Ben is having difficulty understanding that Sam is talking about ideas. Sam is talking about ideologies in Islam. Ben is kind of incapable, you'll see, especially if you watch the whole video, of understanding that Sam is not talking about people. He's not talking about groups of people even. He's just talking about ideas. So let's watch this little clip right here. I'd like to make it clear, I am not discussing or talking about the claims made in this video whatsoever. This is an example of modular thinking. I make no comment on me agreeing or disagreeing with anyone's claims in this video. Let's watch.
I'm not denying that certain people are bigoted against Muslims as people, and that's a problem.
Bigotry.
But
why are you so hostile about this?
It's gross. It's racist.
It's not. But it's so nuts.
It's like saying the stateless shifty Jew.
You're not listening.
All right. So, pretty much as I stated, if you continue watching the video, it'll become very obvious that Ben is subject to modular thinking. Like I said, Sam is clearly talking about ideas here. Ben immediately equates what Sam is saying. He puts it in this box or this module that is, very close to racism, prejudice. Watch the video for yourself if you'd like, and you'll get the idea of what I'm saying. Ben truly doesn't understand what Sam is saying. I think in this scenario, it would be very important for Ben to practice true thinking. We choose to. Well, we don't choose, really. I'm not sure. It may be conscious, it may be subconscious. It's probably kind of a choice, kind of conscious, maybe a hybrid. Especially in emotional scenarios, we tend to fall back onto modular thinking. Modular thinking is definitely a fallback. And this is an emotional topic, or it shouldn't be, but I think it's obvious that it generally is. So Ben has chosen to fall back onto modular thinking because it's an emotional topic. So let's go ahead and look at the next example. This is Jordan Peterson talking to Cathy Newman. You may be familiar with this video. It's very famous. Let's listen to about 10 seconds or so of this.
I asked you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible. So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Well, I made the argument there. It's like it depends.
So you don't believe in equal pay?
I don't know if I'll ever get tired of watching that video. That was just about 10 seconds, but the entire video is full of Cathy Newman's modular thinking, and especially setting up straw men for Jordan. So this is kind of an interesting example here. Jordan presents a clearly nuanced view about a subject, and Cathy doesn't immediately go to nuanced or to modular thinking, I wouldn't say. What she does is she kind of acknowledges implicitly that she's using modular thinking in this debate, and she comes up with two modules. Jordan's either saying that he believes in equal pay or he doesn't, when really neither of those modules is even close to being appropriate. They're not even coherent modules in the first place. They shouldn't even exist because they're meaningless outside of a great deal of context. And so she presents these modules. She says, Jordan, I'm incapable of nuanced thinking. Please choose one of these modules to make it easier for me. Obviously, that's not what she said, but that's kind of what's going on in her head. We can imagine. We're doing our best to understand why she's thinking not clearly here, why she's using bad epistemology here. I think it's because she's using modular thinking. She's choosing to use modules instead of true thinking, true thought. So those are the two examples I wanted to demonstrate. Hopefully you understand what I mean by modular thinking. So let's discuss the pros and cons of modular thinking. It's pretty quick and easy, actually. There's only one pro to modular thinking, and that's speed. So with modular thinking, instead of using processing power up, instead of using your central processing unit, you just search in memory real quick, find a module that applies to this. You already know what to say. You know how you feel about this module. You know what to think about this module. You have words that sound good when you respond to this module. Boom. So we can understand why modular thinking is, if not useful, it's attractive. And it can be useful in scenarios where speed is more important than truth. And that's a lot of our day-to-day life. That is just a fact. Speed is more important than truth, than absolute truth, and lots of practical things. Fixing a car, playing sports, in war, combat. So, what are the cons of modular thinking? Really, just one thing, but it's a big one: being wrong. With modular thinking, you are almost never correct, never 100% correct, because this module it's like, another popular, seemingly parallel example is, maps and territory. A map is not the territory. It's a model. It's not perfect. It might be useful. A module is useful but not perfect. You have to know when to use it. Modules are always wrong because they are not the actual thing being discussed. They're just this coincidentally similar box that you can throw things into to help you come up with good responses faster. And modules are wrong. They're not truthful. So in conclusion, I would say modular thinking is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It would be difficult to live a normal day-to-day life without modular thinking. However, we must be taught what modular thinking is. We can use any language we like. This philosophy, the subject I'm talking about, it's known by other names. I'm not the first person to come up with this concept. There's a lot of ways to describe bad epistemology when people communicate. This is just one of them. We need to know when modular thinking is appropriate to use and when it is not. As I said, modular thinking is great for low priority things that require speed, that do not require a great deal of truth in them or accuracy. More importantly, and most importantly, I'd say we need to know when modular thinking is not appropriate. I would say anytime you're debating or adactics, I believe it's called. Adactics is not quite debate. You're actually just trying to find the truth by talking to someone. The winner is the person who finds the truth or learns the truth, not the person who has the best soundbite. Modular thinking has no place in argument because the entire point of argument is to find the truth. And modular thinking, by its very nature, avoids the truth and is not interested in the truth. It's interested in speed. So those are my thoughts on modular thinking.